Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly forgotten why you came in? Or maybe you found yourself searching for the right word during a conversation, even though it was just on the tip of your tongue. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. These little hiccups can feel frustrating and even a bit scary, but they're also incredibly common as we get older. Still, when those moments start happening more often than they used to, it's worth taking a closer look. Our minds age just like our bodies do. A few wrinkles, some gray hair, we take those in stride. But when memory slips or changes in mood start creeping in, they can feel harder to talk about. The truth is, the sooner we acknowledge the small signs, the more power we have to do something about them. That's why today we're going to talk about 6 early signs of mental decline that you should never ignore, especially after the age of 65. Let's start by getting one thing clear. Noticing small changes in how you think or feel doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means you're paying attention, and that's a good thing. Think of your brain like a garden. When you tend to it with care, pull out the weeds early and water it regularly, it flourishes. But when you ignore a few dying leaves or skip watering for too long, the decline can sneak up on you. Our job is to notice those early signs so we can keep the garden of our mind thriving. One of the first signs that often goes unnoticed is a subtle but consistent problem with short-term memory. Now, I'm not talking about forgetting where you put your glasses once or twice. That happens to everyone. What I'm talking about is a pattern, like forgetting recent conversations, appointments, or the names of people you just met. For example, if a friend calls and you completely forget about the call an hour later, or you start missing dates on the calendar more often than before, your brain might be signaling for some attention. Sometimes we brush these things off as just getting older, but they can be red flags if they start affecting your daily routines. Memory is like a muscle. It can get weaker if it's not exercised. But the good news, it can also be strengthened. And noticing this early gives you the chance to step in and make a difference. Another sign that often sneaks up on people is a growing sense of confusion with things that once felt simple. This can look like getting turned around on a familiar street or feeling overwhelmed by a task you've done 100 times, like following a recipe or balancing your checkbook. Maybe you've always paid your bills on time, but suddenly the statements feel like a puzzle. Or you used to be great at organizing your weekly groceries, but now it feels like a chore that leaves you flustered. This kind of disorientation can be subtle. You might find yourself taking longer to do everyday things or needing to reread instructions over and over again. You might even second-guess yourself more than usual. That nagging feeling of like, why can't I seem to focus, is often dismissed as stress or fatigue, but if it's happening more regularly, it's worth acknowledging. It's important to pause here and say, this is not about shame. This is about awareness, and awareness is powerful. When you're aware of what's changing, you can seek out the right tools, support, and lifestyle changes to keep your mind sharp. No one expects perfection, but we all deserve clarity, confidence, and peace of mind as we age. Let's talk for a moment about how these signs might show up in daily life. Maybe you're baking your favorite banana bread, something you've done for years, and suddenly you skip a step, forget the baking soda, and only realize it after it comes out flat. Or perhaps you've started a conversation with someone, only to forget what you were saying mid-sentence and feel embarrassed. Those moments can chip away at our confidence, but instead of hiding them, recognizing them allows us to act early, when our brains are most responsive to change. Sometimes these early signs of mental decline can also bring changes in mood or personality. Maybe you've noticed that you're more irritable than you used to be, or that things that never used to bother you now feel overwhelming. You might withdraw from social activities, stop answering the phone, or just feel a bit off. That inner spark you once felt might feel like it's dimming. These emotional shifts are just as important as memory changes. The mind and heart are deeply connected. But I want to remind you of something essential here. Experiencing these shifts doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. And it means it's time to give yourself more care, not less. The sooner we acknowledge these signals, the better our chances of keeping our minds resilient and active for years to come. And that brings us to something I want you to really hold on to. You are not alone in this. Millions of people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond are in fatigue. Not just the kind of tired you get after a long day or a poor night's sleep. This is a deeper kind of mental exhaustion that seems to hang around, even when you've gotten enough rest. It's when your mind feels heavy, like it's wading through water, and the smallest tasks suddenly feel monumental. You sit down to read the newspaper, and you find yourself rereading the same paragraph 3 times. You start writing a grocery list and give up halfway through because you can't focus. This kind of mental fatigue often goes unnoticed because it creeps in slowly. You might chalk it up to aging or simply needing more sleep. But when your energy to think, engage, and stay mentally present starts to dip regularly, it can be an early clue that your brain is struggling to process and recover as efficiently as it once did. Mental fatigue is not just about tiredness, it's about clarity. When it becomes harder to make decisions or solve problems, your brain might be telling you it needs a little extra support. It's during this stage that people often start avoiding mentally stimulating activities. Maybe you used to enjoy crossword puzzles or reading novels, but now it feels like too much work. So you stop, and that's exactly what your brain doesn't want. Avoiding mental effort only accelerates the process. Just like physical muscles weaken without use, your cognitive abilities can fade if they aren't challenged. The encouraging part is that this can be reversed, or at the very least slowed down significantly, when you actively engage your mind every day. Now, let's talk about a sign that's often brushed under the rug because it feels so personal. Difficulty finding the right words during conversations. You know what you want to say, but the words just won't come out. You might substitute words or describe something instead of naming it directly. Can you hand me the thing for turning the lights off? Instead of the switch. It can feel frustrating, even embarrassing, especially in social settings. This kind of language difficulty is very different from occasional forgetfulness. It can start to affect how often you want to engage with others. Some people begin to withdraw from conversations because they're afraid they'll fumble their words or lose their train of thought. But isolating yourself only makes it worse. Conversation is one of the most powerful tools for maintaining brain health. It exercises memory, word retrieval, emotional expression, and connection all at once. If this has been happening to you, know that you're not alone. And you're not losing your ability to think or speak. You're just going through a moment where your brain needs a little more patience and stimulation. Reading out loud, singing, doing word games, or just having a daily chat with a friend can do wonders. The key is to keep engaging, not retreating. What makes these signs so tricky is how ordinary they can seem. A forgotten word here, a tired brain there. It doesn't feel like a big deal, but when they start stacking up, they can chip away at your independence, confidence, and quality of life. That's why paying attention now is so important. You are in the perfect position to take small, meaningful steps that can protect your mental clarity for years to come. There's another important signal that often goes unnoticed, and that's a change in judgment. This can show up in subtle ways, like making decisions that seem out of character, misjudging how much money you need for groceries, or clicking on scams you would have spotted easily a few years ago. You might find yourself trusting people too easily or getting confused when making choices that used to be second nature. This shift in decision-making ability can happen when the parts of the brain responsible for reasoning and evaluation start to slow down. And while that might sound a little scary, it's something that becomes much more manageable when caught early. One way to keep this sharp is to stay involved in planning your routines, managing your budget, or setting goals. Doing things like managing your daily schedule, playing strategy games, or even planning trips or family events forces your brain to think critically. Staying mentally sharp isn't about doing big, complex things. It's about small, consistent effort. Keep reading, keep learning, keep engaging. You've spent your whole life building a strong mind, and it's still capable of growing, no matter your age. The thing is, many people don't realize these signs until they've been happening for months, or even years. That's why you're already ahead of the game, just by being here, listening, and learning. Every day you decide to keep your mind active, to pay attention to how you're feeling, to challenge your thinking. That's a day you're investing in a sharper, healthier future. When we understand the early signs, we don't have to fear them. We can meet them with awareness, action, and hope. You are not your forgetful. Because sometimes the signs aren't about memory, speech, or even decision-making. Sometimes they show up in our emotions, in how we feel about ourselves and the world around us. A quiet but significant signal of early mental decline is a noticeable shift in mood, especially when it comes to increased anxiety, sadness, or even apathy. You may feel more easily overwhelmed by situations that never used to bother you. Or perhaps you've noticed a growing disinterest in hobbies, conversations, or even getting out of the house. It's easy to overlook these emotional shifts as simply a bad week or just getting older. But if these feelings persist, if you find yourself withdrawing from social contact, no longer enjoying the activities you used to love, or constantly worrying about things that never used to cross your mind, it might be more than a passing mood. Our emotional health is deeply tied to our brain function. When the brain begins to slow down in subtle ways, it can cause our feelings to become unbalanced. We may not notice a change in memory right away, but we do notice when life feels less joyful, less meaningful, or simply heavier. One woman I spoke with once described it as watching her world slowly go from color to gray, and the moment she realized that, she took it as a sign to act. She started reconnecting with old friends. She began journaling again, something she hadn't done in years. Within weeks, she began to feel more like herself. And that's the beauty of catching these signs early. They give you the opportunity to take back your well-being before the gray becomes permanent. Now, one final sign to be especially mindful of is trouble following conversations or TV plots. You might notice yourself zoning out halfway through a show, forgetting who the characters are, or losing track of what someone just said, even in a quiet room with no distractions. This can be subtle at first. You may smile and nod through a conversation, then realize afterward that you didn't quite follow what was being discussed. Or you may find yourself rewinding the TV again and again, thinking, wait, what just happened? This kind of cognitive slipping doesn't mean you've lost your intelligence. Far from it. But it can be a signal that your brain is having a harder time processing and storing new information, especially when it comes quickly or in complex sequences. That's why staying mentally active is about more than puzzles and games. It's also about engaging with the world around you in real time. Listening carefully, asking questions, discussing topics that challenge you. These are all ways to reinforce those neural pathways and keep your brain alert and sharp. Now that we've talked through the most common early signs, issues with memory, confusion, fatigue, word-finding trouble, emotional changes, and difficulty following conversations, I want to leave you with something deeper than just awareness. I want to remind you of the extraordinary power you still hold in your hands. Aging isn't a decline, it's an evolution. You have decades of experience, wisdom, and inner strength that no moment of forgetfulness can ever erase. The mind, like the body, wants to be nurtured, and it doesn't take grand changes to make a grand difference. Just 10 minutes a day of brain-focused activity, reading something new, engaging in a heartfelt conversation, doing a puzzle, walking while listening to music you love, can light up your mind in ways that ripple through every part of your life. Most importantly, stay connected. Isolation is one of the fastest accelerators of cognitive decline, while companionship, laughter, and a sense of purpose are among the best protectors. So call an old friend. Share a story, ask questions, let yourself be curious again. Mental sharpness isn't about being perfect. It's about staying interested, staying engaged, and staying compassionate with others and with yourself. If you've recognized even one of these signs in yourself or someone you love, that's not a reason to panic. It's a reason to pause, reflect, and act with intention. Our brains are resilient. They're capable of change and growth at every age. The more we nurture them, the more they give back to us: clarity, creativity, joy, and connection. So today, take just one small step. Maybe it's going for a walk while recalling the names of your childhood friends. Maybe it's writing a letter, joining a community class, learning something new online. Whatever it is, let it be a gift to your future self. Because the choices you make today are shaping the mind you'll have tomorrow. And if this video gave you even a little insight or encouragement, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Maybe tell us something you've noticed or something you've done to stay sharp. You never know who might read your words and feel a little less alone. Don't forget to like the video if you found it helpful, and subscribe for more content that supports you.